Good morning and welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason wrapping up the week. Happy Friday to everybody. It's going to be a hot one in the Valley of the Sun. The heat is on. Going to be, I think, 115 degrees this weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Get out on that golf course. Hit the lakes. Whatever it is that makes you happy. And have a wonderful Father's Day. But before you do, add to your portfolios. We've got we've had some hot deals, especially lately. We've got this one's another scorcher coming your way, so be ready for that. 800-951-0592, the website at allamericangold.com. And we got some turmoil in the markets. Gold taking all the losses from yesterday away. All of it taken away. Silver's higher today. Wall Street's down. A little, some problems in France. We don't follow the European markets all that much unless it's important. Macron, he's losing support. And so they called for some snap elections. And this morning, the French Development Bank had to pull a bond sale. You don't see that very often when major countries actually have to pull a bond sale, and they're forecasting a big loss for the the Macron government in France. And Jason, it just kind of reminds everybody, we can pretend it's fine. We can pretend it's not a bubble. Oh, look, we got an all-time record high because Apple and NVIDIA and Google, Alphabet, right? They're all great. Let's just pretend that everything else is, the war drums, the debts, all of these things. But it really has the market on the back foot. Like I said, you don't normally pull debt auctions. And again, the reason why it got pulled is all of a sudden the yields just shot up in France, and and next thing you know, they're like, well, gosh, we don't want to pay that much. Nope, let's just pull the auction.
Not a good sign, right, Joe? Not a good sign, even though France isn't the biggest country. It's an important one, and it's the cracks. The cracks just keep getting bigger and bigger, right? Just starting to become more and more visible how bad it is.
Yeah, and this is something that we'll watch. Consumer sentiment came out today, and it was bad. I'm a little surprised. I thought that consumer sentiment may be a little better. Gas prices fell a little bit. Actually went to the lows of going back to last year. Kind of a surprise where it came in at. So that also didn't help the markets. And then home sales. Man, not much for the spring selling season. Home sales down in May, and it's the same pattern. Not only is it down in May, but prices still were up. Year over year, prices up 5%. An existing home now, median price $438,000. I just don't know. I mean, how do you afford a $500,000 home? Even making like 80, 90,000. And Jason, that's just kind of, you're not living in the best neighborhood. It's not the worst neighborhood, but I mean, right? I mean, it is kind of understandable that maybe the consumer's in a bad mood because everything's just gotten so expensive.
Yeah, and we've, as America, we've accepted the lower standard of living for decade after decade. They call it home ownership, but if you have a big fat mortgage on it that you could barely pay, you're kind of a lease to own. It's what you're kind of hoping for, right, Joe? Yeah, because most people are mortgaged to the hilt when it comes to the properties, and it is a form of rent where you pay for the repairs and the upkeep. It's not a good place for somebody who wants to be a first time buyer to buy a $400,000 or $500,000 house with a mortgage they can barely handle, and then the sink bursts or the hail day and the hailstorm comes in and all this other stuff that can happen. It just takes one minor emergency to throw a family over the side, right, Joe?
Yeah, and man, the Treasury $347 billion deficit for the month of May. That is a new all-time record for that month. I mean, if you did that every month, that'd be over $4 trillion in debt. That'd be almost $4.2 trillion. Now, last May, it was $240 billion. So, I mean, these are huge increases. And what we're dealing with, Treasury outlays for May, $671 billion. And, of course, obviously, not enough revenue to help fix the problems. Spent $671, only brought in $324 billion. Yeah, that dog's not going to hunt forever, Jason.
No, this situation is getting, just as you said at the beginning of the show, just France pulling an auction. Every single thing that we mention on the show is showing in either a local way, a national way, or in a worldwide way how bad this situation is. And we'll watch the news cycle because that emergency, that the Fed's not, these central banks aren't going to take the blame for this. And so we'll watch it. And the people that are kind of hold on to their cash waiting for the right moment to buy into this thing, or wealthier people that don't think things are bad yet, they'll be coming in through the floodgates in a huge way when the next emergency happens upon us, Joe.
Well, yesterday, Saudi Arabia officially ended the petrodollar. Just you won't believe what Russia, China, Iran, and India have done in the last 24 hours. That's coming up next. 800-951-0592. Joe and Jason wrapping up the week here. And, man, just another week of absolute craziness, from CPI reports to dot plots to Jay Powell saying, hey, don't believe the jobs numbers, and now France pulling auctions, Saudi Arabia ditching the petrodollar. Wait till we get to what happened in the last 24 hours. But a quick look in at the markets here. The Dow's down 175 points. That's off the lows. The S&P's down 16. The Nasdaq's down 8. The 10-year note at 4.20. I've seen it as low as 4.19. We'll see. We'll see. That I think is a very telltale sign of how weak the markets really are when you get past the fluff of it all. Gold's up 30, 23.30 right now in gold. TV gold I think is like 23.50, but 23.30 in gold. Silver's up about 15 cents here. Just below 29 1/4. And as Jason and I have been telling you, listen, this is the year of chaos. This is the last, I don't want to say fun year, maybe the last good year, as, again, this tidal wave, this slow tidal wave, this tsunami of debt that has to be rolled over everywhere starts to come to fruition. Be diversified. Be more diversified. You got to have more gold and silver put away. If you've got, maybe you got a big IRA. I don't know. But, by the way, we can help you put it in the gold and silver if you want. You guys know that. But check out our friends at Y-Refi. If you've got $50,000 or more, you get great fixed rates of return, up to 10.25%. Why do we like it so much? Because it's not correlated to Wall Street. Right? You don't have to ride out the crash this time. You got another option to go for. And here's the best part. You can use it as income. You can turn it on. You can turn it off. There's no fees. They don't go after you if you needed your money back for some reason. They don't attack your principal. It's really great because it's all of these student loan debt payers, the private student loan debt payers that these banks, let money to, and then the second they couldn't pay, send them to collections. They can never write it off. They're deadbeats of society. It's amazing how many of these people, if somebody would just give them a chance, could actually pay. And that's what they do. It's a really great thing. And I was just talking to them the other day. They have more credit-worthy people than ever that can start paying these debts off, and you guys they share the reward with you. It's really cool how it works. Check it out. InvestYRefi.com. That's the word invest, the letter Y, REFY.com, or just call them. That's what I do. 888-Y-REFI-24. So, we talked about the data points today, right? Housing sales, lousy. Consumer sentiment, lousy. And then the Treasury announcing a new record for debt in the month of May. It's so funny. Janet Yellen, it's reasonable. Don't worry. If we can just get these interest rates, if we go back to zero, maybe it'll be okay. And then by the way, annualized $4 trillion. Yesterday, we got confirmation that Saudi Arabia, for the first time going back to the 70s, has ended the petrodollar. What does that mean? Just means that they signed up for the Bank of International, help me, Jason, I'm drawing a blank today, settlements, the Bank of International Settlements payment system, right, which allows them to now take any currency that they choose to accept for crude oil. Does that mean they're not going to take dollars? Of course not. But what does it mean? They're going to need less of them. This morning, the Central Bank of Russia shocked international markets and even their own banks when they announced that the Chinese renminbi will replace the U.S. dollar as the benchmark for all currency trades in the country, saying they will no longer do business in U.S. dollars. They'll no longer do business in euros. And essentially, Jason said, we're not waiting for a BRICS currency. We're just going to say it's the Chinese renminbi. End of story. This is another big move. And again, you start adding up. Okay, Saudi Arabia. Well, we're going to take 5% less than dollars this year. Right, Russia? Well, now we're not going to do any dollars, any euros, right? And now we're just going to say, hey, guess what? It's the Chinese renminbi. Jason, these are the problems that they have. By the way, these idiots. I don't know if you guys seen the G7 at all. I don't like to talk politics on the show. I can't help it, though. I can't. Did you see Joe Biden? I mean, the lights are on and nobody's home. The guy can't even get out a sentence. Stumbling around, did you see how he's walking, right? Oh, my gosh, it's insane. But guess what they did? They finally did it. They've frozen Russia's assets that were mostly in the European central banks. And they've been talking about, well, we're going to loan, I love how they say it's going to be a loan, $50 billion to Ukraine back it with these Russian assets. Essentially, Jason, they've just decided we're going to steal another country's assets. What do they think is going to happen? Why do you think BRICS is emerging? Why do you think Saudi Arabia just said we're done with the petrodollar and thinking that somehow they can do this without any ramification? They can just steal countries' wealth. It is just another example of idiocracy and desperate. You know what? I call it what it is, desperation. Right? This is nothing more than desperation. The United States trying to desperately hang on to its role as the major financier of the world.
Yeah, there's several things there. I mean, Russia not using the dollar, they were essentially out of dollars. So it's good. It is an announcement to announce it loudly and clearly to the world, I guess, is something. But, adding on that they're not going to use European currencies, that might actually be bigger, because I think they may have been using more European currencies than they were the dollar before this announcement. And as far as taking assets, I guess it's a big deal because Russia used to be a part of that G7, right? It used to be the G8.
Right.
Now, as far as Western nations or, the American government taking or seizing other countries' assets, I mean, is that just kind of par for the course? Isn't that what they owe you? Where Trump's like, we're taking the oil from Syria, right? Remember the UK, Britain? They took they did a loan with Venezuela, and then Venezuela paid the loan off and wanted their gold back, and they're like, you don't get your gold back. Right. So as far as taking assets, apparently the Western world has felt that Russia should be demoted into the category of Venezuela or something like that. So I guess that's the shocking part of taking Russia's assets. But as far as taking assets, these countries have been sort of doing this stuff for a long time. It's just that in this situation that you brought up, Joe, it seems to have a much more serious connotation. It just seems like there's going to be a much more serious result.
It hasn't gone unnoticed. The Chinese this morning. The U.S., on the one hand, continues to pour weapons and munitions into Ukraine, and yet, on the other, shifts the blame of undermining peace and protracting the crisis to other countries. It even sees the crisis as an opportunity to slap sanctions and suppress others. All of this reveals the U.S. calculations, hypocrisy, and what a bully it is. And, of course, China now has been sending out messages to the whole world saying, come to us, we won't treat you the way the United States will treat you. And it gets worse. Listen to this. Gets worse. India today signed a huge contract with Russia, with Russia going to be supplying it. It's the largest coal deal I've ever seen. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't know a lot about the coal market, but I've never seen a deal of this magnitude where Russia announced 73 million tons of Russian coal is on its way to India. And guess what? To get around the sanctions of the West, it's going to go through Iran into India. And it just looks like, these countries are going to, hey, we're going to pretend to follow the sanctions for a little while, but when we need something from Russia, we're going to find a way to get it.
Who's even telling it the truth at all in this situation? I mean, as far as we know, this is just business as usual, and it started this way, and we're just not getting it reported. I don't trust the American news at all anymore. I don't. The stuff that you read, Joe, it's hard to verify any of it. Maybe this is just what they're doing as a normal course of business. We criticize America and the Federal Reserve a whole lot, but I'll say this. Does any country feel really good about China saying, we'll treat you great, come with us, we will treat you good? I mean, I remember Woodrow Wilson. I've been reading up on some World War I, World War II stuff, and Woodrow Wilson's the one that came into Europe. It's like he has the no victors, no vanquished, the peace treaty of Versailles, right? And he convinced Germany to lay down their arms and disperse their armies for this peace. And we'll take care of you, Germany. Everything will be fine. And after a generation of being trampled on financially and otherwise, basically just created World War II. So I would, I have no influence over these nations that want to join the BRICS, but I hear you say China's like, we won't treat you that way. Join with us. That's really not a good thing for the world, Joe. That really has a feel of the central bankers who run this country and run China. They run both these countries. They run the Russian central bank. They're in league. They really are working together. it sure looks like we talk about lower standard of living in this country, right, Joe?
Oh, boy.
Well, what about lower standard of living for the world when the United States is the world reserve currency and it moves to communist China? What's the world going to look like after everyone joins with China's way of doing business and their socialist policies? But
isn't that where we're heading anyway?
That's where we're headed, yeah.
Seems like every year we get closer to China. And what I mean with our nonsensical policies and the restrictions of freedoms and this digital currency and all this, I mean, that's where we're headed. They're already talking about climate change scores, social credit scores. I mean, that's in the Chinese playbook. But here's what it does say. Listen, I'm not saying, and I don't think Jason is either, that, oh, my gosh, tomorrow the dollar it goes away. What we're saying is there's a major shift occurring, and especially with Russia today now just saying essentially for all practical purposes the renminbis are reserve currency. This is going to create, as Jason put it that way, hey, it's like a mob, and they want more territory, and they're going to get it because that's what they want. That just means it's going to be a harder, lower standard of living here. 800-951-0592. Wrapping up this Friday. Another big special today. $20 gold pieces. 1 through 19. $2,495. That's $55 off. But wait. For every one you buy, we're going to put in there a pre-1921 Morgan Silver dollar. And all of these are solid VG plus Morgan Silver dollars. In the pre-21s, right, those are the ones that are worth the money. These coins are, they're worth like $35, but you buy 120, you're getting a pre-21 Morgan dollar in it. You buy 20, we're going to take $20 off of the $20 gold piece down to $24.75, and you're going to get a roll of the pre-21 Morgans at no cost. So $49,500, you get 20 $20 gold pieces and 20 pre-1921 Morgan dollars. I mean, we're buying so close to spot here. Even if you go, hey, I'll just get one. Great. You get $2,495. You get a $20 gold piece. You save $55, and you get a pre-21 Morgan. We've got about 60 to 70 of them, and then we're out of the Morgans that we have. So take advantage. I mean, getting anything this close to spot. I mean, just pretend, hey, you know what? I got the pre-21 Morgan at $35. God, look at what you're getting the 20 for. I mean, you're getting it for almost for the spot price, within a little over $100 over the spot price today. 800-951-0592. Now, we've seen a pattern kind of emerging on these Fridays and Mondays. Yesterday, I remember gold was down. Yesterday, silver was down. I said, man, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. They shouldn't be down. And obviously, gold has taken back all of the losses and added a few dollars from yesterday, Jason. But I just get the feeling that we're going to see gold looking to establish a new record high here very soon.
Yeah, and I think we'll see record highs continue throughout the year. I mean, we could see record highs continuing through the next few years, Joe. This is, I believe, going to be a multi-year bull market for gold and silver. I mean, just the stuff you mentioned geopolitically in the last segment, starting to put a little light on why these central banks are buying so much gold, because it's a great, like you said, the cartel. It's great that these bankers all work together and that they've enriched themselves and their buddies. It's great for them. But there is some loyalties and some divide even in the upper echelon of the world controllers, and if it starts to be an actual divide, if the world starts to get into a condition that's pretty difficult, then it's every country for itself at that point. Suddenly nationalism becomes popular in these globalist nations, and then you watch out and you just see what happens to gold and silver with all the. I mean, if you look at the debt clock and you look at dollars versus ounces of gold should be like $15,000 or $20,000 for the ounce. And I would say, like countries like Japan, it's probably much worse with the kind of printing that some other countries are doing, Joe, as far as their GDP versus their amount of currency they have. So, very quickly, if things deteriorate on the world scene, gold and silver will just push to new highs. And I think, Joe, it would just be something that just continues to keep happening. We talk about a great reset. Something's going to have to be put together. These guys don't want to lose the power they have, and they're going to have to get into a room and figure out what kind of swindle they're going to place upon the people, whether it's going to be a war or some pandemic or whatever the emergency is going to be done to disguise it. But it's all this stuff is just huge for gold. I mean, the piece or the Morgan dollars, pre-21s, the last pre-21 Morgan's 1904. You're going to get at worst a 120-year-old peace dollar, or Morgan dollar. Excuse me. That's just a fantastic way to buy an ounce of gold for a very good price, and then get rewarded for buying. You're getting rewarded for buying the gold by getting a pre-21 Morgan silver dollar, which literally has been around more than 120 years. So it's no reason not to jump in if you got the means. You should be getting into this, and you should be getting into this fast.
I'm just, we're watching. This thing is really moving pretty quickly. These are big announcements. And I find it interesting that Janet Yellen, she's out on the TV saying, oh, well, the debt, it's, if we can just stabilize it, there's no stabilizing, right? We're on this path, and we talked about it yesterday. We're adding $300, $400, $500, $600 billion of debt every year, year after year. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now they announced, May, we had a little problem in May. So $347 billion of debt in a single month. That's more than a little problem. That's more than a little problem. And then, of course, we got to have the war drones. By the way, the Houthis, another ship. They're starting to pick off these cargo ships. This is the second one in 2 days that they've. This time, U.S. troops there was fires on the ship. They had to go in and rescue the sailors on this ship. Shipping rate costs have exploded again, and it's just a matter of time, isn't it, right? Until what? Till this thing expands, till this thing gets bigger. There's a reason, Jason talked about it before. There's a reason why we invaded Iraq, and we haven't dealt with Iran, or, gosh, Yemen, we should be able to control that. You know what? They've got a little better strategic placement of land, for lack of a better term. They're not easy to defeat, are they?
No, and they don't have leaders that were playing ball with America. I mean, Saddam Hussein was CIA, so he was actually our guy. And the reason he wasn't taken out in the 1991 Gulf War is because Bush Sr. thought that was going to teach him a lesson. He'd play ball again, and then he didn't. And so these other countries you're talking about, like Yemen or Iran, they've not had a leader that's been playing ball with the world system. So you're right, Joe. These are big problems. I mean, I remember I heard the reports that there was a lot of the shipping was just not even going to go through the Red Sea. So the fact that these ships are being invaded means these companies must be very desperate to get their shipping through there at a cheaper rate, and they're willing to put up with the risk of these attacks. And I guess the Houthis, backed by whoever's helping them out, seem to be really watching that strait really closely, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. 800-951-0592. Jason and I will be back right after the break. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour, wrapping up the week here. Good closeout day here for gold. Right now, gold's up 27, just under 23.30 an ounce, 2,330 an ounce. The special today, and it is a great one, $20 gold piece and a pre-21 Morgan silver dollar, $2,495. If you buy 20 or more, $2,475. So you buy 20 $20 Liberties as an example, and you get 20 pre-21 Morgans in there as well. That'd be $49,500. Take advantage. This is just great opportunities to buy really close to spot here. 800-951-0592. And, man, this stuff is coming fast today. It's Friday. They like to get all this news out on Friday so people forget about it over the weekend. Reuters is now reporting that the U.S. bond market participants are starting to worry as liquidity keeps deteriorating in the U.S. Treasury market as issuance continues to rise on the back of debt and deficit spending. Dealers now struggling to keep up with the ballooning size of the U.S. debt market. Liquidity, or the ability to trade an asset without significantly moving its price, has become worse and worse over the last several years. So that's the tales, right? The dealers are like, this isn't working. We got to be able to know we can sell it at this price. Otherwise, right, we're not going to make money. And this is starting to really dent demand. They're talking about the upcoming increase in debt auction size that's coming in August. Regulators and the Treasury itself have launched a bunch of programs to try to avoid disruption, right? They're essentially doing their own quantitative easing. And they're saying that they still say it's just not enough market liquidity right now. Treasury debt, we issue Treasury debt to pay the interest on the Treasury debt. And if you look at the players supporting liquidity, they are not increasing. They said in the last 10 years, the market's gone from $12.5 trillion to $27 trillion. And unfortunately, the next 10 years, they're anticipating it being essentially $50 trillion, and saying that the dealers are constrained because of high capital requirements. And they just seemingly say, Jason, we've talked about this, they don't know how this demand's going to get met.
Right. When it comes to supply and demand, if you got demand that's out of control, that's going to push it. If you have supply that's low, that's going to push it. And if you have both, you start to have a panic, right, Joe? If you have low supply and high demand, that's going to push the market.
There's no carry. So why would we want to own this stuff? It uses up the balance sheet, and you don't make any money, right? This is what they're complaining about, right? Right? You want us to buy a 30-year note? Well, it just hogs our balance sheet, and we don't make any money, right? So who wants to own it? It is very interesting to see them openly talking about what happens. Listen to this. What happens if you have a Treasury auction and nobody shows up? This is one of the dealers involved in the Treasury trade. That's a real concern. And that's where liquidity really matters. And Jason, I hope we're far away from this, but I understand what he's saying. He's saying, listen, if we got to sell $70 billion of paper and there's only $50 billion of bids, right, we're going to have a problem.
Based off what you just said and looking at that problem, Joe, what do you say to somebody like Harry Dent or somebody who says, gold's going to go down to $700 an ounce or $800 or $900 an ounce? What do you say based off what you just said, what you just mentioned? Well,
remember the last time Harry Dent said something like that? What did I tell all of you? The guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And again, I don't know the guy. I don't need to bash the guy, but I know he set out another prediction. I didn't see him mention gold this time, so maybe he got smart. I don't know. But he was talking about the S&P falling 90%. Okay. I doubt it, right? 50%, yes. 90%, I doubt. But, here's the thing in all of this. When the debt gets to those points, everybody goes back to real money. That's what happens. They don't want paper money. You're going to want real things. That's just how it works, and it's always worked that way. Now, does that mean that you won't have a sell-off in the commodities? Sure you would. Right? At some point, Wall Street's out $3,000 or $4,000. They sell everything. But just like the last crisis, what happened? Yeah, gold went to all-time highs. Right? We haven't seen the next crisis yet, but I promise you how it will end up. Gold will be at all-time highs. That's how it's going to end up. 800-951-0592. Jason and I wrapping up the week when we get back. 800-951-0592. Final segment of the week here. $20 gold piece and a pre-1921 Morgan silver dollar. $2,495. If you buy 20 or more, you're going to get 20 or more pre-21 Morgans, 20 or more, $20 gold pieces. Save $20, $2,475. Those Morgan dollars, that's like $35, right? I mean, if you have the means and you can pick that special up and you can get 20 or more of them, you're like $110 over spot on gold at that price. That's just awesome. It's great to be able to buy that close, especially with gold, $2,330. It's not like gold's $300. What a great opportunity. 800-951-0592. Keep adding to it. Keep putting it away because, just look at what we talked about today. I think it's very telling the situation that we find ourselves in. China's going to get a bigger seat at the table, whether we like it or not. And the problem that we're having now, Jason, is the timing of all of this kind of makes sense. We let China become part of the reserve currency system in 2016, and it takes time, doesn't it? And really, when you think about it, it's only been 8 years. And look where we are right now. Look where we're going to be in the next 8 years. I mean, I think things are going to look very, very different than they look today.
Yeah, I don't know if you're saying $50 trillion, if that's going to be the national debt, Joe, in 10 years. I think
no. That'll just be the treasury market side of it. So right now, think about it, the national debt's $35 trillion. The size of the market's $27 trillion. So this will put a national debt somewhere around the $60 trillion range.
Yeah, that's. In 10 years, I guess that sounds right. That sounds about right. We have a pattern going on that we almost double every 8 years. So if we're on that pace, if that's going to continue, then at $35 trillion, Add was just in 8 years we should have $65 trillion in debt. So 2032 we should be at $65 trillion in debt. It's just this process. It's been doing this since the beginning of the century, essentially, Joe. But when Reagan's administration got to the first trillion, it's been folding over this way.
And it's something where it would be one thing like when it doubled the first time and you kept those sizes, but what we're doing, we're doubling at much bigger numbers, right? It's really hard when you start figuring out how is this all going to work when you look at the size of these doublings. It really becomes overwhelming. It just does. And you can see it with what Reuters was talking about, right, where these are bond traders. This is what these companies do for a living, and they're out there saying, hey, we're worried not enough people are going to show up. That's the problem. 800-951-0592. God bless everybody. We'll be back next week.